It's hard for me to do these TikToks because most of the time I look like a bag lady. I'm covered with horse manure or blood and guts from rodents that I feed the raptors. And when I have brilliant ideas to say, I look like dog poop. So I'm trying to get better at it. But I do want to talk a little bit about internal family systems and parts work, which is my new favorite thing. Actually, has been for years, but I didn't know that it existed. And then I found it existed, which is really cool. And it's kind of a combination to me of channeling and removing entities and learning to hear the different voices that live inside of us, the different parts. My meditation teacher used to say that when we're born, we're this new soul that comes into a body, and then life kind of fractures us. We become a student, and we're a daughter or a son, and then we have friends, and we're a worker, etc. And we kind of get disembodied from the higher self. Most of us do. And we develop coping mechanisms, which become like little people inside of us, like little parts, protectors, as it's called in IFS, firefighters, which is also the people who, when you get very reactive and there's a part of you that comes back and, really pushes back at somebody because there's a big reaction, we could call that a firefighter. And then there's all the wounded stuff inside of us, which used to be called inner child work. Now it's referred to as exiles. And learning to be in a deep and profound relationship with all that's inside of us, including the higher self, is the work of what my path, what my teacher described. And now in psychology, we have IFS, and it did start a long time ago with chair work with Fritz Perls and inner child work with ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics. So I am loving that, and it was something that happened more and more in private sessions when working with people, helping them to hear the conversation inside of them and helping them to participate in that conversation, and learning, most of all, to learn how to bring the higher self into everyday life. No description at all can really do justice to what happens when you start to come together inside of yourself. With my teacher, we did it through silent meditation and the cultivation of energy and calling in something bigger than us, bigger than our higher self, that would come in and shift us, and still does. It's the same practice I've been doing for 40 years, sitting in silence and asking to be taught and to be healed. However, I find that adding this psychological tool, for most people, not everybody, really exponentially accelerates your ability to get more, I want to say, I hate the word regulated, I think it's overused, but to become more cohesive, like your family has come together and you really appreciate your crazy brother and your overbearing sister and your funny niece and your grumpy mother and your over-intellectualizing father, etc. Just making up a whole bunch of parts here. That you become much more comfortable with all the parts inside of you. And I used to always talk about every behavior we've done, we did it to save our life. These were coping mechanisms. In IFS, they say no bad parts. So coping mechanisms, we developed them at the time of the trauma, but that was like when you were 12 or 5, and now you're 30 or 40 or 50, and you're still doing the same coping mechanisms for the same little kid inside of you. So we have to update all of that information. It's kind of like going to a family reunion and saying, oh, that's how my brother always is. And now you're not available to find out, maybe your brother's changed. Maybe he's bigger and better or worse. but at least you get to be present with this new version of your brother. So the same thing with these choices we made inside of ourselves, particularly in times of hurt and trauma. We decide a certain way to react to survive, and it needs updating, which is thanks for saving my life, but let's do it different now because it doesn't work anymore. And some extreme examples of this, by the way, are, alcohol and addictions of any kind, cutting. People call it self-sabotage, but that's often a way of protecting our emotions. All of those things, when you do them at the time, you did them to save your life. That's why I don't like that term, self-sabotage. But now that your life has been saved, you don't have to be an alcoholic for the next 20 years. Maybe you needed it for a year or two because that's all you knew you could do. So I totally love this work. On the other hand, it has become very widespread, very popular, like Reiki became, and I'm staying away from that. I'm really happy I got to talk to Bob Forrester, who has kind of moved away from the mainstream of this kind of work and is sticking to some of the original premises and I guess purity of this kind of work. It was very validating to have that conversation because it was in alignment with a lot of what I was feeling and thinking. I'm very dubious when things become very, very popular because then imitations arise and it's really hard to stay with the original pure thing that came about. I think I talked about that before. And that's another reason I don't do a lot of videos, because it's really hard to think about things to talk about simply to a camera. For me, anyway. Maybe other people are good at it. Anyway, still having meditation classes here. It's not just meditation. There's a lot of channeling that goes on and healing. And for some people, groups are better because they feel less put on the spot. They're less shy. And they can see what other people are going through, and that makes them feel better and safer. And other people like private work and like the attention and the intensity of private work. But when I say meditation, it doesn't mean that we're just sit there and be quiet. It actually means that we're calling in the really big energies, and we go on a big adventure to see what can shift inside of us, what we allow to shift us. All right, guys. See you later.